Now, First John is not addressed to any geographic region. Like, of course, that's why we name all of Paul's letters the way we name them, because he tells us who he's addressing his letters to. The letter to the Ephesians, or the letter to the Thessalonians, or the letter to the Corinthians, and so on. But there's nothing specifically named here in terms of an addressee for John, for First John, I mean. It's simply addressed to those who have heard the gospel of Jesus Christ and believed, which means that John is intentionally writing to all Christians, and that includes us, just as much as he's writing to Christians in the first century. He's writing to us. And so today we're going to start our look at this very valuable, very important letter. And we're only going to look at the prologue today. That's all we're going to have time to get to, the first 4 verses of chapter 1. And we'll look at this. We're going to be examining 1 John over the next 10 weeks. You may think that's a long time. It's not. I have enough material for 32 weeks, I think. We'll try to jam it into 10 weeks, but hopefully you're okay with that. But let's begin by reading together these first 4 verses of 1 John. That which was from the beginning, which we have heard, which we have seen with our eyes, which we looked upon and have touched with our hands concerning the word of life. The life was made manifest, and we have seen it and testify to it and proclaim to you the eternal life, which was with the Father and was made manifest to us. That which we have seen and heard, we proclaim also to you, so that you too may have fellowship with us. And indeed, our fellowship is with the Father and with his Son, Jesus Christ. And we are writing these things so that our joy may be complete. Now, there are so many really important themes in this passage. There's the Word, there's the life, there's the Father and the Son listed there together. But the very first thing that I want to point out is at the very end of the passage, which you're seeing there on the screen. It is the stated reason for why John is writing this letter. It is this idea of the unity in the gospel bringing joy. He says, and we are writing these things so that our joy may be complete. Now, I suppose it would be very natural to read that verse and see that word our and think, oh, John is probably using kind of this editorial we. Like sometimes we do that, right? When we're talking and we're talking about leadership in some capacity, I might present that to you and might say, well, we are thinking about moving in this direction. What I'm really saying is I am thinking about moving in that direction, but it doesn't sound very good for me to say I. Might sound domineering, and so I might adopt that we with you. And so it would kind of go like this. I'm writing to you these things. I want you to read all these things. I want you to understand and grasp all these things so that I can be happier. That would be very natural for us to think that maybe that's what he's employing there. Or maybe he's saying we, and he's kind of including all the people that he has lived and traveled with. But I don't think either one of those are actually the case in verse 4. If you reread the 4 verses that we read, you'll see in the beginning where John says we and our, he is talking about those who were eyewitnesses of the events of Jesus' life. So those 12 disciples of Jesus, plus the entourage, because there was an entourage of Jesus, who spent time following him around. And then there were hundreds of witnesses, Acts tells us that. There were hundreds of witnesses that saw him after the resurrection. And so we, says John, looked at him. We heard him. We felt him. We, the eyewitnesses. Right? So he's definitely using we to mean a plural we in that sense. And in that form of we, he's maintaining that form of we all the way through verse 3. He says, I'm telling you about what we saw because I want you to know what we know. And I want you to experience what we've experienced through Jesus. But then there's a shift in verse 3 as we get into this where he says, so that you too may have fellowship with us. And indeed, our fellowship is with the Father and with his Son, Jesus Christ. Now, in that whole phrase, after the semicolon, look at the semicolon and see the whole phrase that comes after that, You are the reader being added to us. Right? Up until that point, the we is very much a plural we. All of the people that were involved with with John, people like Paul, people that had experienced Jesus. That's the R, or that's the us that's before the semicolon. But the our after the semicolon is you and me included in that together. Those who saw Jesus, those who directly heard from Jesus, and now you, the reader in the 21st century, are included in our fellowship altogether. He's transitioned into that usage without us really even recognizing it. Our fellowship is with the Father and the Son, Jesus Christ, and with everybody that has come before us. He's like kind of borrowing from some of the language from Hebrews, which says, since we are so surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, right? That's the hour that we're talking about. You and me together in the 21st century with all the people that came before us. So by the time you get down to verse 4, John is including all Christians who have tasted and seen when he says, and we are writing these things so that our joy may be complete. Our joy may be complete. It's not just those who have touched Jesus with their own hands. It's the whole community together who will experience a more complete joy. John is saying, everything that I'm writing to you is to get us, all of us, a more complete joy, a full joy. Do you want joy? I don't know of anybody that says no to that question. I think everybody's answer is yes, I would love to have joy in my life. Then pay attention to 1 John. Because this is how joy gets made complete in your life. It's incredible to think John's joy is tied to his brothers and sisters' joy. But that's what he's saying here. If their joy is growing, so is his. John had no concept of individual joy because there is really no such thing as individualistic Christianity. And this is how we practice Christianity in the 21st century. It's all about us and our relationship with God individually. But there was no concept of that for John. He understood that this was a community. He doesn't say, I want you to have the same experience and the same joy that I have. That's not what he says. As though each person's joy is independent of anyone else. John says, the things I'm telling you about, as they are grasped by more people, that brings a fullness of joy beyond ourselves. We're plugged into something greater. Jesus kind of said the exact same thing in John chapter 15. These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be full. Jesus is saying there's an interaction between our joy. My joy is going to be in you as your joy is full. The you and the your, by the way, in that verse is not second person singular, it's second person plural, which we have to translate in the Texan, y'all. It's y'all's joy. It's a joy that's participated in as a community. And the implication is that there is a connection then between Christian hearts. There's a joy when the thing that you love is experienced by another person in your community. There's joy in that. Isn't that great when that happens? This isn't a new idea, by the way. This isn't like a strictly Christian idea. Although maybe you're examining it outside yourself for the very first time this morning, it's not a strictly Christian idea. It's the reason why there is such a temptation among parents to live vicariously through their children. Because it brings you joy when they experience joy. And so many parents are interested in trying to bring that joyous experience into their kids' life. John says there is a sustaining sort of joy, though, that isn't tied to a direct blessing in your life. You certainly do get that joy when you have a direct blessing in your life. But he says there's a joy that you experience because of the blessing of salvation and the deeper experience of the person of Jesus Christ by another. This is what John is getting at here. It may not even be necessarily yourself. You certainly get that joy if you experience salvation in and of yourself. But because you understand the community aspect of this, there's a joy when somebody else comes to Christ. This is never more clear to me than at camp when we're at Idrahaji and we get to the last night and we do a thing called a stick ceremony. And it only works when there's no fire ban because we need fire to burn sticks. But anyway, the kids all come up and they share something about what they learned during the week, and they throw in a stick into the fire. It's a ceremonial kind of object lesson for them to participate in. And what we ask the kids to do is if they accepted Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior that week, that they let us know during that stick ceremony, and they can just say that and then throw their stick in. And there is no more joy, I can tell you, than hearing a child say, I chose to follow Jesus Christ this week. Nobody twisted their arm. Nobody told them that they had to say that. But there is this joy that wells up within you when a child makes that profession and says, yes, I chose to follow Jesus Christ this week. You see, the world says continually, I want more joy. We all do. But how do we get it is the question. Oh, well, I'll just do things that make me happy, and then that'll make me joyful. But if you do all of those things alone, those things that you experience that make you happy, what you recognize, if you've experienced any life at all, is that there is that happy state, but that it has a series of diminishing returns. You can never quite capture the original state of joy, no matter how many times you repeat the said action that brought you joy the first time. And the only way that you get greater returns is to experience that which makes you happy through the eyes of another. Every grandparent knows this. And in other words, to be in a community of people who love the same things you love and to love them. That's what ultimately brings you the joy that lasts. And of course, we're going to see that as one of the major themes in 1 John is to love one another. See, if you're looking for all the joy on your own, well, the inference here is in 1 John is that the fullest joy is a community sort of experience. It's our joy as a whole community together. Not only is it the fullest joy, John says it's possible to have complete joy. What is that?